On today's episode of The Rebel's Edge, live from Cardone Studios in Miami, Florida, the Bulls struggle to stay in charge as the relief rally continues. VFC rallies big time on continued consumer footwear spending and their supreme sell-off. We'll tell you about that one. And Fortinet's flying up over 25% as the cyber craze continues in the wake of the CrowdStrike debacle. All that and more on today's Rebel's Edge.
Bang! Jared said, don't use the clapper today. You're in Cardone Studios with the nice logos behind us and everything else. By the way, that is not Pete Najarian over there. That's Marc LoPresti. And we are delighted that you guys are joining us. And Marc, the master of the cold open.
I put my heart and soul into those cold opens, Jon.
He sells it hard.
We got to keep it interesting. We got to keep it interesting. It was great to be back here at Cardone Studios. Of course, our business partner, Market Rebellion shareholder Grant Cardone. Big thanks to you, Grant, for letting us come and invade. And when we come, we do invade. We don't give the studio back. No, we just come up with more content to shoot and other ideas.
We get in and we lock the door from the inside.
Pretty
Grant,
much.
If you hear a banging like that'll be Grant trying to get in. But let's dive in, Marc, to Macro Minute. That's what you guys tuned in for. And we're going to say, just as Marc did top of the show, that it's really global recovery 1.0 after 3 days of very harsh selling. Even as we had a little bit of a recovery yesterday, couldn't really hold on to too much of it, couldn't hold on to too much of the recovery in very many of the stocks, some of which saw massive turnovers. And in fact, just saw minutes ago, Marc, that the S&P 500, now 23% of the stocks in the S&P 500 are experiencing bear markets. In other words, they broke through. It was just 16% a week ago. So that gives you an idea that we're starting to slide. Now, the question is, Marc, whether we'll be able to stop.
Yeah, and listen, I'm getting concerned because even just from this morning, we were up almost double where we are right now. I'm looking the Dow for itself up just shy of 200 points. I think we were up 350.
400 and something, Yeah,
as much as 400. So there's definitely quite a lot of resistance. There's still quite a lot of bearish sentiment in the market. And my big concern, and then we'll get to the fantastic futures, but my big concern remains that algorithmic trading, right? Those computers that kick in, put those sell orders in there when they hit certain levels and certain technicals. And I think we might be looking at seeing a repeat, not necessarily of Monday, but I think we could see some more selling pressure come in today.
Yeah, well, Disney, for instance, folks, we're not trying to get ahead of ourselves too much, but Disney, they're bragging about the streaming finally not being as much of a drain as it was.
Right.
But the parks, the theme parks, where billions and billions are supposed to be coming in there, are coming in light. And some of that is the argument or war they had with DeSantis, the governor of Florida, where we are right now. And other parts of it where they picked a bunch of bad movies. A lot of that is basically causing Disney to not put up strong numbers and instead trade to the downside. But we'll get to stocks. Let's hit fantastic futures.
Yes, sir.
Fantastic futures, I'm going to say, well, we were looking at 3.69% on the 10-year. That was Monday as the markets just tumbled. We got back up to 3.93% just a little bit ago. And the 10-year, I think that is my fantastic future for today, Marc.
Yeah, and listen, you can't, against the backdrop, I know nobody's going to necessarily be surprised what I chose, right? But it's the Fed watch. It's what is the street looking for in terms of how much and when. We're now looking at an 84.5% chance that the Fed's going to cut 50 bips in September. And lots of really interesting chatter from different economists as to whether or not there maybe needs to be a so-called emergency rate cut before then. Most economists saying, no, it's not that bad. And even the economist Sam, I think I'm pronouncing her name correctly, who came up with this recession gauge that was triggered on Monday and caused all kinds of waves of controversy. Even she came out and said, yeah, I know my indicator is indicating that we've got a problem, right? We're redlining here, but I don't see a recession in the offing. So definitely a lot of mixed signals from the data.
We'd have to see another couple days like Monday. We'd have to see at least one, perhaps 2 days when the market's down 1,000 or a massive reverse, not just from a 400-point gain, but flip from a 400-point gain to a 400-point decline. That could get the Fed a little nervous to the point where they'd at least talk about an emergency meeting. But without that, I don't think we're going to see emergency meetings.
I agree.
All right, let's talk about VFC, Marc, because this one, as Marc said, they have a lot of brands under VFC Corp. This one in particular, we had on 3 at 3 yesterday. 3 at 3 is the show that I do where I talk about the biggest unusual activities of the day. I picked 3 of those, and one of those 3 was indeed VFC. And so we had the chart of unusual option activity in there, and they were indeed buying upside calls. And here it is. They beat by about 4 cents on the bottom line number. They beat on the top line number as well. So a lot of positives for this one. The stock was right at 1650, and it explodes to the upside today, Marc. So good news there.
Yeah, I mean, it's slightly off the day's high of 1886, but still holding at almost a solid 13% up on the day, $18.56. These folks make a lot of things, a lot of brands that you all know, North Face, Vans. They did own Supreme. I alluded to that in the cold open. Mm-hmm. They sold that off. That helped these numbers. That was a $600 million addition to the bottom line, non-recurring, of course. Interesting decision as to why they sold the Supreme brand, not totally sure. But listen, what's interesting to me about this story, you've heard me talk about this even in the last quarter of earnings season. When it comes to specialty, consumers are still willing to spend on the stuff that they have deep affinity to. And Jon, footwear stays at the top of that pack.
Yeah. Well, in any of the hipster TV shows, Marc, you go into people's closets for these reality shows, they're loaded with footwear of all types, whether it's women with the red bottoms. That would be
they don't own that company.
Christian Louboutin.
Yes.
Or whether it's guys with the tennis shoes. So Vans would fall into that category, perhaps. There's a lot of interest in footwear, and it's not a hugely, at least for a lot of us, not a hugely expensive expenditure when you're talking about footwear. Now, for ladies, yeah, those red bottom shoes are $1,000 plus.
It is.
I know,
and that's an LMVH brand, if I remember correctly. And it's not even a footwear story or a sneaker story. It's where we see these continued areas of strength in consumer spending, notwithstanding that core things still remain high, notwithstanding that people have all-time high credit card debt, all-time low inflation-adjusted savings rates. They're still spending on something.
Yep.
And this is one of the somethings that they're spending on.
Exactly. Now, how about for this one? Another something, but it's not consumers spending in this case, it's businesses. Lumen. So we had this one for unusual activity the last couple of days. In fact, take a look there on your screen. That's Lumen. They were buying upside calls in this one. Stock was $3 and some odd cents 3 days ago, folks. And in the face of a big sell-off, Lumen has been rallying. And one of the reasons here is that a lot of what they do is what these data centers thrive on. They need fast connectivity and so forth. Citigroup gave them a big upgrade to the stock today, and the stock jumped massively. In fact, it's nearly double in the last 3 days, Marc, up over 98%.
Yeah, and congratulations to all of our members in that UOA service that got that signal, put that trade on. If you did, take your profits. Pigs get slaughtered. Don't forget, take your profits. Be happy. The interesting thing about this to me, Jon, a little bit more of a macro component of the story. When we have a sell-off like we did on Monday, the kind of bearish sentiment, the destruction of the yen carry trade, because those that actually follow that know, where did that money go, typically speaking, in terms of the investment in the money borrowed in yen? It went into tech. right?
Yep.
A lot of major tech bull markets have been partially or even in large part attributed to the yen carry trade. We have the complete destruction of the yen carry trade, right? With Japan hiking rates for the second time since going from a zero cost of money on Monday, and sell off like we did on Monday. What gets hit hardest usually first? Risk assets, tech. Well, this is tech.
Yep.
And this is AI. And everybody was saying on Monday, well, it's all those AI names that they're overbought and the prices are crazy and they have to sell off, they have to cool down. Guess what, folks? That's not an absolute. Don't count on that.
Right. And when I say connectivity, this is fiber connectivity. And when they book $5 billion, which they just did, and then they talk about increasing that dramatically because of the demand from AI and the connectivity that these guys can provide, well, that's one of the reasons we're looking at this one doing so well today. All right, Shopify, big company out of, I believe, Canada, Mark, up strong today. Shopify came out with some pretty darn great estimates. The revenue was up over 21%. And if your revenue is up over 21%, your bottom line, in other words, the EPS, earnings per share, better also be up, because we know things cost more. But in this case, both the revenue and the earnings per share were up double digits, Mark.
Yeah, and look, these guys, as some of you probably know, these guys make setting up your own e-commerce website, setting yourself up in business really easy, really easy, right?
Yep,
I mean,
true.
Even people that are not computer savvy can get their own e-commerce website up in a number of mouse clicks and a credit card. Shopify, these guys exploded during the pandemic when everybody was doing whatever their stay-at-home job, whether it was, tea cozies or whatever their specialty was. These guys benefited big time, or bigly, as you like to say. But look, the reality of it is this, though, and again, going to go back to that, macro thread, because I think it's important that we try to help the viewers understand what exactly is going on, not only in the market, but in the economy. Shopify would not be putting up these kind of numbers if people weren't shopping, right? If people weren't actually seeing that commerce, because they don't make a lot of money when you set up your home-based business website. They make money on those transactions.
Yep, the turnover.
The turnover, exactly. They clip a little piece every time somebody buys something. So again, another area where people keep on spending.
Yep. And even though Amazon didn't blow out their numbers like Shopify did, basically another competitor to Amazon in those stores that people set up and sell through Amazon and Shopify.
That's right.
All right, let's talk about security, Mark. Security's been on everybody's mind ever since that CrowdStrike and the blue screen of death that appeared on anybody running Microsoft. And also, of course, Delta, which was knocked out of the box and is suing basically about $5 billion is what they're hoping to recover from the outages caused by the CrowdStrike change in their program.
Yep.
And it knocked a lot of businesses down, Schwab among them. A lot of trading companies weren't able to function as they normally do. Well, Fortinet is beneficiary. Now, these numbers here today are not part of that, because that just happened a little over a week ago.
Right.
This Fortinet issue is that they've been doing much better on the security side. They're a very strong competitor to Palo Alto Networks, to CrowdStrike, to a bunch of these guys. And the bottom line numbers prove that their efforts are being rewarded.
No doubt. And look, you're absolutely right, John. This, from a calendar perspective, does not take into account the CrowdStrike incident. But I got to tell you, the trading in this thing, right? I mean, it was up almost 20% in the pre. The trading in this thing is undoubtedly benefiting from the CrowdStrike halo effect. It's kind of like those old-fashioned signs they used to have in the factories that say, it's been 3 days since the last, fatal accident on the factory floor. At Fortinet, they've got one of those things that says, it's been never since we took the world's computers down.
Yeah.
CrowdStrike can't really say that, right? So these guys, I don't know, they might be lining up to eat CrowdStrike's lunch.
Well, Palo Alto Networks and Fortinet both stand to benefit, we think, pretty substantially. And there's going to be some sort of restitution for companies like Delta, and they won't be the only one.
No, and what's also interesting is following on the venture, on the private market side of things, we saw a substantial spike and increase in VC investment in cybersecurity. It had kind of leveled off over the past few years, and it spiked again in the wake of that CrowdStrike situation.
All right, well, let's take a look at Pete's Red Zone Sports. Now, Pete is not here today, obviously. But nonetheless, Marc and I are going to handle the Red Zone Sports, and we're going to kick it off with Olympic basketball. The dream team. The dream team that we've got this year is indeed loaded with talent, but there are a couple teams out there that are also pretty loaded with NBA talent and NBA comparatively. Many of those teams that play in Europe and the players that elect to play over there, perhaps rather than the NBA, are right on that same kind of level. I'm talking about France. I'm talking about Serbia, Germany. I mean, there are a lot of good teams out there. And in fact, those three teams are all in the finals. Semifinals, I'm sorry. France, Serbia, Germany, and of course, our dream team. Now, the question is, Marc, we've got Germany in the semifinal, and Germany is going to have to match up with some pretty good NBA players that usually are playing again for Serbia.
Right.
And that makes it a very interesting matchup because these guys know each other. They have played together perhaps in some of the Pan-European championships before getting over into the United States. So this Olympic semifinals, the United States is going to be playing France, but Germany's going to be playing Serbia, and that is going to be a big game.
Yeah, I think that's definitely going to be one of the must-see TVs when it comes to this particular component of the Olympics. Been very impressed with Team USA. Team USA overall performing very strongly across many categories during these Summer Olympic Games in Paris, no doubt.
And we'll wind it up, folks, with the most decorated, most medals ever in an Olympics. This guy has won 5 gold medals in the same sport. He is an Olympic grappler. He is a heavyweight wrestler. It's Jon Lopez from Cuba. He's a super heavyweight wrestler. And can you even imagine, Marc, anybody winning in 5 Olympics? Winning! Not just competing in 5 Olympics. And we do have several people like Mr. Phelps, of course, who did back-to-back huge performances and did the Mark Spitz with all those medals hanging around his neck and so forth. Well, this guy, gold 5 separate times, just cemented himself in Olympic history.
Unreal. So, Jon, we got 2 things we got to cover before we let the audience go. We have a small cap spotlight today. So this small cap spotlight today is going to feature a company we've talked about before. It is BioLargo. This is a company we are shareholders. We are paid advisors to this company, so disclaimers away. But this is an incredible company. You know about them because they are the distributors of one of
There's our buddy
products.
Dennis Calvert.
There's the CEO, Dennis.
Yep.
They distribute Poof.
That's right.
That a natural organic odor remover. I use it, by the way. It's not from odors that I generate, of course, but in general, they're also in a renewable battery technology. They're in medical devices with their Cleara division, and they're also in clean water with a PFAS remediation technology. That, of course, is those forever chemicals that we find, unfortunately, in just about all the water systems in this country and globally. Well, BioLargo reported yesterday Q2 gravenue growth again, second quarter in a row, hitting it out of the park. Revenues grew almost 250% over the prior quarter, putting about $5 million in cash on the balance sheet. Shareholder equity increased to about $6 million. Dennis, as you pointed out there, he continues to deliver on the plan that he's laid out for this company. We love it. We're going to continue watching it. Stock up today on the news. The report came out yesterday, but stock's up about 1%. Take a look at it and follow the continued success of BioLargo.
An amazing company. They have a whole bunch of intellectual property. So they don't actually put most of what they have together and sell it through stores or do business to business sales. And that PFAS that Marc's talking about, that forever chemical, if you saw the Marc Ruffalo movie, folks, Dark Water, that is exactly what these guys address. They take that PFAS out of the water. One of the things that's in that movie, of course, is how Teflon and other coatings were invented and then turned out they had some really horrible effects on animals and human beings. And these guys have a solution to take that out of the water supply and so forth. When you get all of the different pieces of BioLargo and look at what they do, it's an amazing company. And again, intellectual property that somebody else builds, these guys get that intellectual property, build on it, retain it, and then basically rent it out for royalties and so forth. It's a brilliant business model. Check out BioLargo.
And that PFAS story, interesting in terms of the impact on 3M and DuPont, right, who agreed to one of the largest mass tort settlements in the history of the United States, in excess of $13 billion to compensate municipal water supplies that they had knowingly contaminated. That story is not over. And Jon, the last thing we're going to do is we're here in part to talk to our buddy Grant about what we're doing in October. I'm going to let you pitch this one.
October 11th, folks. If you'd like to join us for a mastermind, this is going to be a one-of-a-kind event. Limited to 100 people. You can come to Aventura, Florida, the Hilton Hotel, and join us for the Rebel Mastermind. Now, this is going to be Tom Lee, I believe Bryn Talkington, Larry McDonald, Marc LoPresti, myself, Grant Cardone, Pete Najarian. I mean, all day long, we're going to trade from 8 in the morning until the markets close. And then the VIPs, we're going to head out for a little dinner on the yacht. That should be fun as well. And it's limited to 100 people. So if you would like to attend, there's also a 2-day 10X WealthCon hosted by Grant Cardone himself that'll go on the 9th and 10th. And this live trading event will be Friday the 11th. So you can see all about that. Click the link, and I hope we see you down here in Aventura with us the 9th, 10th, and that live trading event, the Mastermind, on the 11th. Bang. That said, we're going to throw it back and say, we'll see you tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Bang.